Hello, and welcome to part 2 of our Datablock and Focus series on Cube Reports. I'm your moderator, Chris Conley, and with me today is our Datablock and Cube Report maven, Ria, as well as our Senior Solutions Consultant for North America, Tyrell. If you missed today or yesterday's webinar, part 1 in the series, fear not, it's already posted on the eMite website. You can also find it on the webinars page, emite.com/webinars, as well as our YouTube channel. Before we get going, a quick reminder, if you have any questions at any point, you can type them into the Q&A section of the webinar app, and we'll get to as many as we can before the end of today's session. That does it for today's introduction, so I'll pass the metaphorical mic over to Ria to take it away.
Thank you so much, Chris. And to those who attended yesterday's session, welcome back. And just like what Chris said, for those who are joining us today for the first time, welcome to Datablock and Focus. And don't worry, the webinars are recorded and we'll have it up in our YouTube channel. So you'll see that in just a sec. So just to get things going, so yesterday we covered the basics of cube reports, from creating cube reports from scratch, basic aesthetic settings. So you can go ahead and check out the recording of that webinar. It's already posted. On the next slide, you will see how it looks like in our YouTube channel. So today we will be focusing on much more advanced settings of the cube report. Yesterday we just had cube report that had an x-axis. So today we would focus on cube reports that would have both x and y-axis, and what can we do with these kinds of reports and how it would cater to your day-to-day reporting needs. And the third installment of this series would be coming soon, so please expect an announcement from us through an email blast. So just watch out for the advanced session or the part 3 for cube reports. So this is our YouTube channel, where you would see that we already have a playlist for all the webinars. So for the first cube report webinars that happened yesterday, we already had one as well for the very first eMite life hacks that discussed on everything about wallboard. So you would also find that in our webinar playlist. So as you can see, just on the lower right corner of your screen, that would be the 2 themes of our webinars that we have get going. So we have eMite life hacks, so it would be different tips and tricks that you would learn on how to navigate eMite. And the one that we have at the moment is Datablock and Focus, wherein we would zoom in all of the data blocks that are made available in eMite, and we have decided to start with cube reports, as it's the most fundamental data block that would help you navigate and build reports in eMite. So in the next half hour or so, this would be what we would discuss. So yesterday we discussed basic settings and how to design a cube report. So for today, we would focus on how to fine-tune your cube reports and some more additional design settings that you would find within the cube, as well as other or additional chart types. So yesterday we had the simple ones, but for today, we will focus on more advanced chart types. So we have the heat map. You will see that in a bit later. Stack column and bar or area charts that you would have as an option when you create cube reports in eMite. And then some more best practices, how we can play around with your cube reports and how it would be related to other data blocks within eMite. So I'll just quickly unshare my slides and get into eMite. So I have blank pages up for you. So we'll go ahead and start and create a cube report from scratch. So under edit page, you have add content. That's how you can add different data blocks, specifically a cube report. And another way is through this plus sign, and it would allow you to create a brand new page. And same thing, it would direct you to the same path if you would add the content under edit page. So since I have a blank page ready, let's go ahead and do this. So I'll just add one data block for now, and it would directly bring you to the main menu of so many different data blocks. But of course, we'll just select and choose Cube Report. And yesterday we've covered the importance or the great help of having your Cube report saved in report sets. So I have a report set. You can consider it as a folder, if you will, where I have saved all of my reports, and I can reuse them over and over in different pages, and that would definitely cut the time almost half in terms of building and creating new reports. So very, very helpful. So I'll go ahead and choose agents interacting. This is what I want to show you. I've already prepared this. So I'll make this a little bit bigger for everybody. By default, all of your cube reports will take the column chart. So you can change that depending on the visualization you would want to have. But let's go ahead and fine tune this further. So if you notice, we have our x-axis over here, or the different categories where the number of agents interacting have been sliced and diced, so you know how many agents are interacting for this queue name or advisors, and so on and so forth for the rest of the different queue names. So to have better visibility on this report, we'll fine tune it by getting into change type. This is where you would see all of the different chart settings. So like I said, by default, it's in column, so we can change that later on. But let's enable the legends so you would know what are the different measures, and later on you would see a cool thing because the legends would also serve as a quick filter within your cube report. So if I click on OK, there you would see the legends that I've just enabled here. So if I just select on voice, you would notice that your cube report would also be updated real time, and it would take off everything for voice. Same thing for message, and so on and so forth, right? So those are legends. Now let's just quickly double check what we have in this cube report, since we have covered the different parts of the cube yesterday as well. So if you just click on that pencil icon for edit report, then you will get back inside the cube, and by default you would get into measures and you would see which index the measures are coming from. So it's from queue observations, and this is the measure that I'm trying to represent in this report, the number of agents or the count of agents that are currently interacting. And for our x-axis, we have selected the queue name. As you can see over here, different queue names or groups. And then y-axis over here would be media type. That's the reason why you have seen voice, chat, or email, callback, message. So that's your media type for the y-axis. Do we have any filters here? Nothing is selected. Options, none. So that's good. I'm happy with my report. Just go ahead and exit this. So now that you have enabled your different legends over here, let's go ahead and change this chart to, I want to use a stacked column. So this is interesting. Oops. I would have to select stack bar instead. There you go. So this is another option that you have. If this is a better representation for your report, then you can go ahead and select it. And let's go ahead and fine tune it further by changing the font color of your axis. Still in the style tab, can click on, I would want to have an aqua blue color for the font. We're good. And then what else do we need to select here? We have the legends enabled. So we're good. And then another interesting tab that you have here in the chart setting would be sorting. So if you click on this tab, in your y-axis, you have all of these line items, and you can go ahead and sort them ascending or descending. So I just want to sort that descending, so you would see in the background how it changes. So if you're happy with that, if you're happy with that setting, I can go ahead and show you another setting that you can enable under style, which would be flip axis. So this would allow you to interchange your X and Y axis for a much better representation of your data. If that would work for your report, that's an option that's available for you. So if I put a check mark on flip axis and hit on OK, so you would notice that now your original Y axis, which would be the media type, is now inverted and has now flipped their position. So if this is something that you're happy with, then we'll go ahead and save this. Don't forget to save your page under edit page so that you won't lose all of the settings you have done in your cube report. So now that's saved, we can do something else in this particular report. So just additional beautification features. So if you click on the header style or that A icon and get into frame style, you can change the background color of your cube report. And if you want to have sort of a gradient in your cube report, this is where you can set it. So by default, it would say bottom. So that's how the color would be spread across your cube report. But I would want to change that, and I would want to use this color, start color is black. Oops, darker black. And then like purplish color. So let's see how would that look like. So that's how it would look like. And if you're not happy with that, you can always go back to your header style and change it. But another option you have is to actually put an image in your background. So if you just click on this folder icon, we have some preset images in eMite which you can choose from. This is what I would want to use. Oops, the dark blue background, which is pretty cool. So if you're happy with that, I'm pretty happy with that report. I'll just minimize this. So that's one more chart type that we have covered. It's the stack bar. So let's go ahead and add another data block or another cube report and go back to my data or report set. And this time around, I would want to show you today's service level. Again, by default, it's in column, and we'll just have to maximize this so that we can work on it better. So if you just click on the chart type icon, by default, you will get this drop down, and we would want to use Heatmap for today's grade of service or service level. And by default, you would get this, and it doesn't really look nice. So we can do some more work to make this heat map look better. So just go back to the change type icon and go back to style. Look for the color axis. So let's start with a red and end with a green. So better green. All right, I'm happy with that. And then let's enable legends so that we would be guided accordingly. And let's also enable data labels. You will see in the background how would that change, right? And I want that to be in black font. All right, there. So let's go ahead and click on OK and see how this would look like. So you have your x-axis over here for your media type, and this would be your y-axis for the hours of the day. So you would notice it would just be up until the current hour until the entire day finishes, and you would have more rows added to your heat map. So let's go ahead and see what else we can do to make this report look better. We can also flip the axis again to have a better view and see how would that change. So you would notice that now your media type would be in your y-axis and the hours of day would be in your x-axis over here. Now, say you're a contact center manager and you don't oversee all of these lines of businesses. You just oversee voice and callback. So you can go ahead and filter this cube report by going back to edit report, look for that pencil icon in the header of the data block, and get into filter and just uncheck the ones that you don't oversee as a contact center manager. So I just oversee callback and voice. Let's do a preview of that. And just scroll down, save that. So then you will just have your voice and callback queue groups or queue names. Let's minimize this data block, and I'm pretty happy with that report. Okay. All right, now let's add one more cube report. And get back to my report set. Oops, just missed that. All right. And then this time, I want to show you this cube report for talk time, inbound versus outbound. And let me maximize this very quickly. So now that you see the talk time versus inbound and the outbound queues, you can work on this cube report by checking on more settings in your change type icon. So we'll play around y-axis settings. So if you click on this, you will have two, since we have selected the direction, or let me just close this out very quickly and get into the cube just so we know what's in the report. So this is the index queue history, and we are checking on the y-axis, so the direction, whether it's inbound or outbound. So that's why you have two bar representations here for inbound and outbound. So let me just quickly exit that and go back to my chart settings and y-axis setting. So that's the reason why you have two line items here. Now you can also change your y-axis for one to be secondary. So say my focus really is inbound as a contact center manager, and my secondary focus would be outbound. So I can go ahead and represent that in my report as well. So I want to have some variety in my cube report and not just have it in a column chart. So say I want the inbound to be an area, and or we can change that, say, to a line, and then the outbound would be represented by an area chart. So we can go ahead and click on OK, and that's how it would look like. So those are some helpful settings that you would find in y-axis settings. So another thing that we can also do would be to have some threshold rules set in your cube report. So if you click on this plus icon and say I would want to have a rule for the inbound, and I want to see the peak and do some trending for this line chart. So say that's 20,000, anything that's more than 20,000. Then I can use some of the symbols made available here, but I'm not quite happy with that. I can use some of the preset images that we have as well. If you click on custom, I want to use this red bingo ball instead. And let's have another threshold rule set for outbound as well. Just a quick note, don't click on this. This plus sign doesn't work, but as a best practice, always click on the plus sign outside the threshold box that you have set. So let's select outbound this time. And I think that would be 30,000 if I'm not. All right, then I would also use the same image for this. Click on OK and see what happens. So the threshold settings that we have set for the line chart worked for inbound, but why didn't it work for the area chart? So if we go back to the settings page and go back to Y-axis settings, your threshold settings will only work for line. That's the reason why. So if I change that to a line chart and say I just want to make that both primary Y-axis as well. Click on that. So that's how your cube report would look like. So this just goes to show how customizable eMite is with all of these different settings made available for you. So say I'm quite happy with the reports that I have. Go ahead and minimize this. I'll just fix this around and save my page. So those are some of the intermediate settings that we can do in your cube reports. And other best practices that we have along with cube reports would be relating it to other data blocks. If you would watch the first webinar recording yesterday, for those who did not attend, you would see that we can link cube reports to different data blocks. And let me go ahead and do that for you. So this time I would want to add 6 data blocks. Get go. Let me just close that out. So you have 6 ready data blocks here, and just click on the plus sign, choose a cube report, and go back to my report set. So I'll choose that report. I can change the header title right away here. Do that. And then I'll do that again and go back to my report set and use the top 2 and say that's silver. Lastly, top 3, and then change that to bronze. So what I'm trying to do here would be 3 podiums for gold, silver, bronze. So this is already a report saved, so I didn't really have to get into the cube and select the index, y, x-axis. So again, that's the advantage of maximizing the report sets. And you can find out how to do that if you review the video for yesterday's webinar. Now, for the other 3 data blocks that we have on standby, I'll choose a status data block and say I will do also one for gold, and then one for silver, and then another one for bronze. Now, what we're going to do here is to make your cube reports the data source of your status data blocks. So if you click on data source over here, you can select the measure for your status data block, and you would have different options, but you can definitely get it from the report that you have already previously created. So like this, top one, and I'll do the same thing for the two other status data blocks that we have, top two, and then lastly, top three over here. So this just goes to show that this is the data source at the bottom, your 3 cube reports that you have preset. And I can go ahead, I don't even have to link it, but it's mainly the data source for this status data block. Now, let me just do a quick setting here, not here, but in the header style. Click on the use report member checkbox, and you will see that it would directly get it from your cube reports x-axis. And even if I close this one out, it's going to stay. So let me just do the same thing for the two other status data blocks. But the cool thing for status data blocks, or a unique thing that they have, would be a format painter feature. So if I click on this format painter and click on the next status data block, it would practically carry over the same setting. So it's faster and so much easier. So let me do the same thing for the last data block and close this out. So billing, and just resize this. And put this last one over here. So there would be other settings specifically for status data blocks, and I will be reserving that for the webinar just focusing on status data blocks. But those are some of the best practices that we use for cube reports, how we can link it to a status data block, how we can link it to other data blocks that we have covered yesterday. But this is a good way if you would want to gamify your or something in your team, and you would want to create, you know, top 1, 2, 3 gold, silver, bronze podiums, and have that report flashing, or even share it as a wall board. So that's something that I would show in the next webinar. So those are some of the settings that I wanted to highlight today when it comes to cube reports. And again, let me just promote that this would all make much more sense if you can also review the recording for yesterday's webinar for the basic ones, and you can always have access to it. If there's something you have forgotten, then you can always view these webinar recordings to see how it's done. And I hope this would give you more confidence in creating different cube reports, exploring its different settings within eMite. So let me just quickly share my slides back. I just have a few more left before we get to the Q&A portion. Oops, sorry, let me just, it's almost there. There you go. So all of the things that I have covered in today's webinar would also be documented in our knowledge base. So that's the URL to our Confluence page. So please feel free to bookmark the Confluence page we have for eMite, as well as get into our user voice portal if you have any enhancement requests, some features that you want to see in eMite. This is where we get your ideas fresh, as well as you can get into some forums or current discussions of other users of eMite. So a very good online resource for our users, as well as in the event, I hope not, but just in case you encounter some challenges within eMite, these are the numbers that you can take note of and the email address directly to our support team that's ready to be of assistance with anything and everything in your eMite. So I'm now going to open the floor for any questions, and I also have Tyrell on the line if you have some questions that we can give answers to. So I'll just give it back to Chris, our moderator for today's webinar. Thank you.
Of course, love it. Great stuff, Ria. Just as a reminder, there's a Q&A section at the bottom of your screen on the webinar toolbar that you can use to ask your questions. And it looks like we have a question around how many more webinars are we planning on doing? Ria?
Yes, thank you for that question, and it gives me an opportunity to promote my webinars. So when we end 2019, there are around 4 more webinars in the pipe, all about different data blocks, and there would be 2 more. So there would be 2 remaining webinars for data blocks in focus. Like I've mentioned earlier, we'll be focusing on the status data block as well as the gauge data block. So that's upcoming. And there would be 2 more eMite life hacks, and that would be discussing around the different indexes that we have for you to get to know your data source more so that you would have that much confidence in navigating, using, creating your own reports in eMite, and as well as having another eMite life hacks webinar on report aesthetics as a whole. So not just focusing on cube reports, but on other data blocks as well altogether. So 4 more until we end 2019. And this would be an ongoing training initiative of eMite. So more to come in the next year.
We also have a question, which I guess that was a good segue for. Are we planning on covering all the data blocks within eMite? I'll let Rita handle this one as well.
That's going to be a yes and a no. So yes, for all of the relevant data blocks that would be useful for our Pure Cloud customers. And for the ones that we won't use anymore, that's not going to be covered in our webinars, and our developers team are also looking forward or looking into retiring some of the unused data blocks just so it won't confuse our users anymore. But definitely yes, for all of the data blocks that you would use for your eMite reports.
Awesome. It doesn't look like we have any more questions. So that being said, thanks everybody for joining us. We appreciate having you. And yeah, hopefully we see you guys around.
All right, thank you guys. See you in the next webinar.